Euranet Plus Panorama is a weekly review of European news broadcast by our network of EU radio stations.
Welcome back to the Euranet Plus podcast. In this week's episode, we're looking at the new vision of the European Commission for the European agriculture sector. And Nina Lamparski will be with us to explain the findings of our latest fact-checking report. The European institutions are currently in discussions regarding several possible paths for yet another overhaul of the complex and controversial common agricultural policy. At 63 years old and with 6 major reforms under its belt, the EU's farm policy is in the eyes of some ready for retirement. This is why Brussels is looking at giving it yet another facelift, as indicated in its new so-called Vision for Agriculture and Food, the strategic roadmap for the EU's agri-food sector post-2027 that was released in February. Its aim? To address economic, environmental and social challenges, as Christoph Hansen, European Commissioner for Agriculture and Food, told the European Parliament plenary in March.
First, an attractive and predictable agri-food sector that ensures a fair standard of living and leverages new income opportunities. Secondly, a competitive and resilient agri-food sector in the face of global challenges. Our farmers insist on fair global competition, and the vision clearly states that we will push for a fairer global level playing field. Thirdly, we need a future-proof agri-food sector that works hand in hand with nature. The fourth priority area is about strengthening the link between food and consumers and promoting a fair living and working conditions in vibrant and well-connected coastal and rural areas.
Brussels will table its CAP reform proposals with a view to their adoption on 16 July, together with others that form part of the EU's next multiannual financial framework, or MFF, for the 2028-2034 period. The bloc's Agriculture Commissioner is keen to ensure that the CAP's massive budget, €387 billion, is not slashed too severely in what are expected to be grim negotiations on the MFF. Alongside traditional priorities such as the cohesion policy, which made up 35% of the previous MFF, and agriculture, some 33%, a number of new ones, in particular defence and security, have gained ground. However, according to Romanian MEP Daniel Buda from centre-right party EPP, agriculture and security go hand in hand, as he told his colleagues in the European Parliament during the last plenary session in Strasbourg. Radio Romania reports.
Today, we need to feed 450 million Europeans, while globally over 700 million people suffer from hunger. But the sector's figures are worrying. Farming incomes are 40% lower than in any other sector, and only 12% of farmers are under 40. Without firm measures, Europe risks becoming dependent on imports, losing control over its own food security. And dependence creates vulnerabilities. What we need today are policies to protect European production, to cut red tape, and above all, I emphasize above all, we need adequate funding. Money for agriculture is not money for farmers. It represents the investment needed to prevent hunger being used as a weapon of war. If we want a strong Europe, we must ensure that it is fed, and that starts with supporting our farmers.
This view is shared by Álvaro Mendonça e Moura, president of the Portuguese Farmers Confederation. In his role as permanent representative to the EU, the seasoned diplomat took part in negotiations on the previous CAP reforms. In an interview with our colleagues at Radio Renascença, he stresses that we must continue to pursue food sovereignty as an end goal.
Of course, we cannot look at security exclusively from a military point of view, although that is indispensable. Our aim is to draw attention to the fact that defence also involves food production. Without this, there can be no strategic autonomy. It is therefore very important, at this point in time, to take 3 major parameters into account: security, energy and agriculture.
Mendonça e Moura adds that to ensure Europe's security, the EU must make sure that it remains competitive on the global food market. Meanwhile, since mid-February, the European Commission has been engaged in an extensive exercise to simplify its legislation through a series of so-called omnibus packages. Several of these will apply to the Common Agricultural Policy, which has long been slammed by farmers for imposing unnecessary administrative hurdles and controls. This simplification will also help steer the policy in a direction set out in the Vision for Agriculture and Food. On 14 May, an initial package of measures was set out, aimed at reducing red tape for both farmers and administrations and making the implementation of certain CAP rules more flexible. According to the Commission, these changes could save farmers up to 1.6 billion euros per year and national administrations some 210 million euros. National governments would also be given more flexibility and autonomy in managing subsidies. The plan is also to place greater emphasis on socio-economic support for certain categories of farmers. Small farmers in particular will see payment formalities lessen. They will also be exempted from certain environmental rules designed as cross-compliance requirements. At the same time, they will remain eligible for eco-scheme payments that reward environmentally friendly farming. But José María Castilla, a director at ASAJA, a Spanish association of young farmers, says there is still a long way to go. He tells us Radio Castilla y León that so-called productive agriculture is not given the prominence it deserves.
We regret the lack of concrete measures focused more on professional agriculture, on productive agriculture. In other words, the kind of agriculture that ensures food security, that allows us to be competitive in the international arena, and that also makes it possible for us to achieve a positive trade balance.
At the same time, environmental organizations are sounding the alarm, fearing that slashing red tape will lead to the unraveling of the CAP's environmental measures. This will not happen, Christoph Hansen tells Luxembourg's Radio 100.7, insisting that the bloc's environmental ambitions will remain unchanged under the new rules.
I can say very clearly that it is exactly the opposite. We have ambitions that remain strong and unchanged. Yet over the past 3 years, since the latest agricultural policy was introduced, we have noticed that some things do not work very well in practice. But with the proposed simplification, with grassland for example, we have actually managed to achieve greater environmental protection and greater climate protection. I think it is important that we bring environmental performance into line with the reality of agriculture, and that is exactly what we are doing here.
The Commission will present another simplification package before the end of the year, this time focused on environmental and food safety policies that go beyond the CAP. And I would now like to welcome Nina Lamparski, our fact-checker at Euranet Plus. Hello, Nina.
Hi.
So what have you been looking into with Euranet Plus's fact-checking team this month?
Across Europe, military spending has surged to levels not seen since the Cold War. But there are growing concerns that the sharp rise could be coming at the expense of pensions, healthcare and other social services. The issue has also become a target for disinformation. Some viral claims falsely allege that the European Union plans to seize citizen savings or even dismantle public welfare systems to pay for defense.
And have you discovered anything interesting about the origin of these claims?
According to experts, many of these stories appear to come from pro-Kremlin sources, with the aim of undermining trust in European institutions and stirring up public backlash. EU officials and independent fact-checkers have pushed back, saying clearly there is no official plan to cut pensions or scrap benefits. That said, budget pressure is definitely real.
So, how much has military expenditure actually increased?
A new report using data from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute found that in 2024, defense spending across Europe rose by 17%, reaching $693 billion. Germany is now the top military spender in Central and Western Europe, while Poland leads within NATO, with more than 4% of its GDP going to defense. In fact, 18 of NATO's 32 members now meet the alliance's 2% spending target. That's up from 11 the year before.
Well, these are massive increases. How are EU countries financing them? Is this indeed happening at the expense of social policies?
So far, most governments have avoided making direct cuts to social welfare. But the report points to mounting pressure. Take France, where controversial pension reforms have sparked mass protests. In Italy, a basic income program has been scaled back. And in Belgium, rising defence budgets have coincided with delayed housing subsidies and stricter unemployment rules. In Eastern Europe, countries like Estonia and Latvia have made sharp increases to their military budgets, while hitting pause on plans to expand their welfare systems. The next major test will come with the EU's long-term budget for 2028 to 2034. With rising costs linked to defence, climate commitments and an ageing population, European leaders will have some tough choices to make about what gets funded and what doesn't. Whether Europe can strengthen its defences while still protecting its social model might just turn out to be one of the biggest challenges of the next decade.
Thanks for clearing that up for us, Nina. That's all from me today. Thanks for listening.